This is Danny Panzella reporting for Infowars.com and TruthSquad.tv. I'm here at Zuccotti Park, where earlier I got to have a conversation with Chris Hedges, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and author. Here's what Chris had to say.
So there's been some controversy over your statements about calling the black bloc a cancer, but I've also heard you say that there are times when it is important to pick up a weapon, you know, like from your reporting in Kosovo, you could see the importance of self-defense. So I think there's been a lot of confusion. If you just want to speak to what you actually meant when you say, is it a tactic that's problematic? What were you really trying to communicate to these activists, young activists who think that this is the way to resist a very violent state repression?
Well, of course the state is horrendously violent. But if you begin to employ tactics in the form of counter-violence, it has to be incredibly well thought out. You just don't walk down a street and start throwing bricks. That's thoughtless, and it frankly plays into the hand, at this point, of the security and surveillance state. The object now, and of course the danger of the Occupy movement, is that it was a mainstream movement. You came to Zuccotti Park, where we're standing today, when Occupy was encamped here, on any weekend, and you had mothers and fathers from New Jersey pushing strollers all over the place. That terrified the state, which is why they shut it down. And what they have two goals. That is, one, to demonize the movement and sever it from the mainstream, and the black bloc becomes an effective tool to do that. And secondly, to funnel the energy of Occupy back into a dead political system. And I think that, as you correctly point out, I covered the war in Sarajevo. You know, nobody, if you'd had discussions about pacifism when we were surrounded, being hit with 2,000 shells a day, you would have been laughed out of any room you were in. And I mean, violence is always tragic, but there are moments, and this was true in the war in El Salvador, which I also covered, where the death squads were killing between 700 and 1,000 people a month, when you are forced, in order to ensure your own survival and the survival of your right. But we're not there yet. And the point is to fight the state with intelligence and strike out at where they're most vulnerable. And where they're most vulnerable is that we speak a truth that they do not want widely disseminated, and that is that the entire system is gamed against us and is now in the service of this rapacious, corporate, oligarchic minority that controls not only the financial system but the political system. So. And the media is, of course, completely corporatized. So my argument with the black bloc is that they're not thinking. And, you know, I have had long debates with Derek Jensen, who I know very well, on precisely this issue. You know, I can't go there in terms of violence. Well, Derek believes in the escalation of tactics. Derek has talked about blowing up dams and this kind of stuff. But it's thought out. And my problem with the black bloc groups is that they engage in what they call feral or spontaneous acts, and I think that it's very short-sighted. And
the repercussions are damage the movement.
Well, they severely damage the movement. As we've seen in Oakland, I mean, the African-American community in Oakland has just walked away from Occupy over this issue. And if anyone deserves to be respected and listened to, it's that long, heroic resistance within a city like Oakland of a beleaguered, repressed African-American leadership that has courageously fought white supremacy and white power for decades. And that, for me, is a huge window. I mean, when a local community or a local city with resistance figures of the caliber that exists in Oakland want nothing to do with Occupy, then Occupy needs to sit down and rethink what they're doing.
Obviously, though, people are just doing what they, they're just kind of being reactive and being pushed to their limit, and they're just kind of reacting. Which,
well, look, I was a boxer for 2.5 years, and one of the tactics that other boxers use is to make you lose your head. But your head is where your brains are, and if you lose your head in a boxing match and you start reacting, you get killed. And the same way is true in a movement. We've got to use our head. We can't just react. I mean, look, these guys make me angry, very angry. I'm talking about,
Anger is a legitimate emotion, but what you're talking about is not just being reactive, but like thoughtfully effective. Well, and as you said, unity before is a real threat.
I'm talking about winning, and I'm talking about what's smart and how you win. And let's go back again to to a boxer. You have to keep thinking. You have to know what your move will be and what the reaction will be and how you'll counter it in the same way that you do with chess. And that's the game we're playing. They have tremendous resources. They are determined to destroy us. And I guess it really boils down to asking us to be smart in the way that we try and bring these people down.
Comment at the New York Times, it seems like it was your moral courage in speaking out about the war that became problematic to an institution that claims to represent both sides of the truth, as it were.
Well, the New York Times is an organ of the elite and always has been, and what they claim to represent and what they actually represent are two different things, as anybody, I worked there for 15 years, knows. And war is not an abstraction to me. I've spent months of my life in Iraq. I knew what we were doing, and it was, I have friends not only who've suffered but died because of this over there, and not to speak out would have been, in the service of my career, would have been morally reprehensible.
Unconscionable. It's like some people's conscience won't be silenced. You can't ignore that. You had a conscience.
Well, Hannah Arendt says, never trust the people who say I shouldn't do this or I can't do this. Only trust the people who say I can't. I couldn't.
And the last thing is just about the war crimes in Iraq that you reported on, and that is exactly the kind of thing that Occupy and is trying to stop, and the corporations that profit that we're all surrounded by right now from those types of wars. Is the media at all conveying the trauma, the soulless void that you so well describe in your book, and the veterans that you interviewed describe the sort of I don't know, maybe your words were captured.
No, I mean we only have pity on our own, and I can tell you from having been spent many years in war that the real trauma that most of these veterans endure is the trauma over what they did, and they're not if they publicly attempt to recount what they did, as the people that we interviewed and for our book Collateral Damage that I did with Layla Larian, that's something the wider society doesn't want to hear, because they talked about the atrocities that they had witnessed and the atrocities that they had committed against the Iraqi people, and that's just something that that the commercial media isn't going to touch, because it is something that won't find corporate sponsors, and we'll see them roundly attacked by almost every segment of the society for shattering that mythic narrative about who we are and what we stand for.
So while institutions like Fox are parading and promoting war as this heroic endeavor, as you describe, the reality of war and the unending bloodshed and sort of the darkness of it is the reality, the truth of it is completely invisibilized.
Well, it's a lie, and the only people who actually see war, unfortunately, are the people who go to war. There is the technological capacity to show us war. If you have your legs blown off by an anti-tank mine, it takes you 6 hours to bleed to death and die, something I've seen. We could set up in real time a camera for 6 hours, and you could watch it, along with every other horrible, disgusting, venal aspect of violence.
Talk about reality TV.
Well, there you go. But it'd be very hard for the people who profit from war, and there are many people within a few blocks from us that make tremendous profits off of war. War's always been a good business. They don't want you to see that.
I want to get an update on your NDAA lawsuit.
There was an article in the New York Times today. The government asked the judge to reconsider, and the judge upheld the injunction.
If you could give us an opinion on corporate roundtables like the Bilderberg Group and the Council on Foreign Relations.
I don't know. What's the right word? Whore? Prostitutes. Yeah. Let me just think about it, Dan.
Okay.
For Infowars.com and TruthSquad.tv, this is Danny Panzella reporting from downtown Manhattan.